What's up, YouTube? This is the Roman Atheist here, Romanus Atheist, and we are going to do another PragerU video, this time by Ben Shapiro. I don't remember the name of the last guy. I know this is the second one I've come out with. The last one was 28, almost 30 minutes long. Hopefully this one's a lot shorter. It's on Western Civilization by Ben Shapiro, like why it's successful or something. We'll let him get into it.
Western civilization. It's been around for a while, but suddenly everybody is talking about it. Some are anxious to save it. Others are happy to see it go. But what exactly is Western civilization?
Alright, so I know he said, but what is Western civilization? But that, before you can even ask that, I think you need some kind of definition for it, so let's let him do that.
Is it the great cathedrals of Europe or the Nazi concentration camps?
Here's an idea. What if it's both? Why does it have to be either or? You can have both Nazi concentration camps and cathedrals. Why do you need them to be separate?
Is it the freedoms secured in the U.S. Constitution or chattel slavery?
Again, I say, why can't it be both? The freedoms in the Constitution are great, but it had problems with slavery even in the Constitution. In fact, these are even more intertwined than the concentration camps and the cathedrals. I don't see why he's separating them.
Life-saving medicines or poison gas?
Alright, so all 6 of these things you have brought up have occurred in Western civilization, or what he's going to claim is Western civilization, but they also have occurred in many other civilizations, including poisonous gas and all of the above. So I don't think it's anything so far distinctly Western about any of these things.
The left likes to focus on the bad: genocide, slavery, environmental destruction.
Maybe because those things need to be fixed in our society or in Western civilization. Just because the left focuses on that, because those are problems, doesn't mean that they don't also see the good in a possible civilization, or want to reform it in a way that they believe, or the left believes, to be better. That's a possibility, correct?
But those have been present in every civilization from time immemorial.
Yes, and why shouldn't we fix that in Western civilization? Isn't the goal of being in a civilization to make that civilization better? So removing those things might be a good thing. Maybe that's just a possibility, Ben Shapiro?
The positives are unique to the West. Religious tolerance.
Well, the Mongolian Empire was one of the most religious tolerant empires of all time. So does that make them superior to the West?
Abolition of slavery.
Well, that wasn't by any thanks to the Bible, like you're gonna claim in a little bit. Abolition of slavery was done in spite of the Bible, and the Bible was repeatedly used to claim that slavery was a God-given right. So, where you headed with this?
Universal human rights. The development of the scientific method.
Okay, so all of these things that he has brought up have not been have all of these things occurred in other civilizations, not only Western civilization, which he has yet to really convince me of a thing, but what he is explaining as Western civilization, what he will with Judeo-Christian values and some other, and some Greek stuff that he's going to talk about. I don't remember exactly what it is. All of these things were present in other places, like let's see, the Persian Empire that invaded Greece with the whole 300. Slavery was against their religion. So I would like that to be explained to me on why they are not the most progressive, and they were one of the most religiously tolerant people too, because they're the ones who like freed the Jews from Baghdad or whatever. But anyway, I'm gonna let him continue because this is already going too long.
These are accomplishments of a scope and scale that only the West can claim.
Here's the fun one. Source, because I'm gonna have sources in for everything that I just claimed there because that's the right thing to do, and because PragerU doesn't do this, and I checked their video, and I'm gonna link the video, they don't have any sources. So I'm gonna do the right thing and put in sources.
These aren't the only achievements that make the West special and uniquely successful. As Western thought evolved, it secured the rights of women and minorities, lifted billions of people out of poverty, and invented most of the modern world.
Then let's let this keep going forward and not let religion detract from our society and our culture in the way that it has for thousands of years.
Progress hasn't been a straight line, of course, but the arc of history is clear. The obvious proof is that the world is overwhelmingly Western.
Then why do we need a distinction of Western civilization and whatever other civilizations you're going to bring up? If it's overwhelmingly Western, why is it a distinction that needs to be made?
And, with few exceptions, those parts of the world that aren't aspire to be. Why? Why has Western civilization been so successful? There are many reasons, but the best place to start is with the teachings and philosophies that emerged from two ancient cities, Jerusalem and Athens.
Okay, so we're starting to get to the part that I object to in this video, but I'd like to clarify. In general, I do agree that Athens had put a great understanding of way to understand the world in our consciousness. So this is my statement affirming that I agree that Athens is important to the West, but I strongly disagree that Jerusalem played an important role in the formation of modern Western civilization.
Jerusalem represents religious revelation as manifested in the Judeo-Christian tradition, the beliefs that a good God created an ordered universe and that this God demands moral behavior from his paramount creation, man.
Okay, so none of that is inherently uh, Judeo-Christian, to be very clear. While the Greek and Roman religions are manifest in those gods believing man should be obedient to them, which is basically what he's trying to say here, but added the word moral because an appeal to emotion, pretty much. And most other religions have that, and it's actually the religions that try to hold that to a T currently that are the most dangerous, and you'll kind of try to point that out, but you're also going to argue that reason and rationale alone are destructive too, and we'll let him get into that.
The other city, Athens, represents reason and logic as expressed by the great Greek thinkers, Plato and Aristotle, and many others.
Yes, that stuff is important, but I would like to point out that the 17th century talking about reason and logic was much more effective at bringing about Western, not superiority, that's the wrong word, Western civilization's dominance than Greek logic, but that logic generally is relatively good.
These two ways of thinking, revelation and reason, live in constant tension. Judeo-Christian religion posits that there are certain fundamental truths handed down to us by a transcendent being. We didn't invent these truths. We received them from God.
Okay, source. How do you know Moses just didn't make up those truths? Also, the Ten Commandments really don't have much of a revelation in there. Like, long before then, humanity knew that murder was wrong and that stealing generally is not okay. And when you say, oh, stealing is always wrong, what about stealing to feed your family? Or stealing to feed someone else's family that's starving, like, let's say, in the French Revolution? Is stealing then still wrong? Like, it's hard to know. It's hard to know what's moral and what's immoral, even with these Ten Commandments.
The rules he lays down for us are vital for building a functioning, moral civilization and for leading a happy life.
I would like proof for that. You making that claim means absolutely nothing to me, so please prove it in some way, and you're not going to, but I would love it if you did.
Greek thinking posits that we only know truth by what we observe, test, and measure. It is not faith but fact that drives our understanding and exploration of the universe.
Maybe facts don't care about your religious beliefs, Ben Shapiro? Or maybe your feelings about your religious beliefs? I'm taking your own words and twisting them to target what you're saying. How does that make you feel?
Western civilization, and only Western civilization, has found a way to balance both religious belief and human reason.
I would like you to prove that, because I'm pretty sure the Chinese civilization had some pretty good, well, at least better religions than, well, not better, all religions are kind of a mixed bag, but had religion and a lot of people believed them, and they also had some relatively good reason, and they've been pretty successful up until, like, the time when all empires were having problems, especially Western ones, like with France, and then are starting, and it's starting to do better now, but with less emphasis on faith. Maybe that's just a possibility that faith isn't required to do well, it's more reason that's important.
Here's how the balance works. The Judeo-Christian tradition teaches that God created an ordered universe and that we have an obligation to try to make the world better.
First, I agree we have an obligation to make the world better, but I vehemently disagree that the Judeo-Christian God or gods or whatever you want to go with made any attempt to claim that, especially not in the Bible, or I haven't read the Torah in Hebrew, but if it's anything like the Old Testament, for sure not in the Old Testament. So yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is, can you give some evidence for that?
This offers us purpose and suggests that history moves forward.
You don't need a god to know that history moves forward. That's a relatively simple thing to realize, because if history didn't move forward, then 30, 40 years ago, there really wouldn't be any computers, and definitely not ones to the level that I'm using to record this video right now. So technology is moving forward, and the past is history. Wait, history can't move forward, because history is just what happened in the past. That I just figured out everything wrong with that statement without realizing it. Oh man, Ben Shapiro, you're making me have questions about the intelligence people claim you have.
Most pagan religions taught the opposite, that the universe is illogical and random, and that history is cyclical.
Source. How many pagan religious texts have you read? In fact, I don't even know of any pagan religious texts that are like bound, because those are mythologies by definition, and so is Judeo-Christian stuff, but they're passed down and then written down as mythological stories. I don't know of anyone who believes at least Western pagan religions, and when you talk about like Buddhism and Hinduism, what about that cyclical? I mean, I don't know, I haven't studied that as extensively, but I'm pretty sure you haven't either, because you haven't had a quest for a new faith, so maybe that's just a possibility.
History just endlessly repeats itself, in which case, why bother to innovate or create anything new? Second, Judeo-Christian tradition teaches that every human is created in the image of God. That is, each individual's life is infinitely valuable.
Alright, so all of these things that you've said that Judeo-Christian values has instilled in Western culture, or Western civilization, you can get to without the Bible. Like humans have an infinite amount of value in the way wording that he phrased, infinite amount of value. You can get that by just realizing, oh, well, this is our only life, and we don't want to ruin that for anyone else or ourselves, so we should respect that, and you get the same result, but without a God who's murdered millions, possibly billions. That's just a possibility. Ben Shapiro, what are your thoughts on that?
This seems self-evident to us now, but only because we have lived with this belief for so long. The far more natural belief is that the strong should subjugate the weak, which is precisely what people did in nearly every society in all of history.
Until Western civilization started giving up their religious beliefs and realized, oh, this is immoral, we should probably not do it, and I am going to regret using the word immoral, but you don't need a God to tell you slavery is bad. You can know this based on a vehement understanding of when someone else in your group, which is humanity, at least from my perspective, is hurt, that holds everyone back.
Only by recognizing the divine in others did we ever move beyond this amoral thinking toward the concern for human rights, democracy, and free enterprise that characterize the West.
But one could just as easily argue all of those came about in spite of religion. You have no evidence that those things happened because of your religion or Christianity or whatever else you're going for. Because Ben Shapiro, I believe you're Jewish. I'd have to double check that, but I'm sure someone will correct me because you have like mega fans.
But Judeo-Christian religion alone didn't build our modern civilization. We also required Greek reason to teach us objective observation that man has the capacity to search beyond revelation for answers. Greek reason brought us the notion of the natural law, the idea that we could discover the natural purpose, the telos, of everything in creation by looking to its character. Human beings were created with the unique capacity to reason. Therefore, our telos was to reason. By investing reason with so much power, Greek thought became integral to the Western mission.
I would like to point out that I think Western civilization was more shaped by the Enlightenment age than Greek philosophers. Yes, much of the Enlightenment was based off of the founding work of the Greek philosophers, but even more of it was based off of new ideas and thoughts that were brought about of more of a rejection to religion than before, like with the Freemasons and that kind of stuff, and I'll have sources for all of this in the description.
Nowhere is this more perfectly expressed than in the American Revolution, in which the founding fathers took the best of the European Enlightenment, with its roots in Greek thought, and the best of Judeo-Christian practice, with its roots in the Bible, and melded them into a whole new political philosophy.
So much of the Constitution was directly designed to not have religion being involved in government, so I would like to argue that religion is not had very little to do with the actions of the founding fathers, if not were in stark contrast, because the King of Great Britain had divine superiority or whatever, divine right to rule. That's what I'm going to go with. Even according to many of the colonists, so it would have to be without that for them to be able to um, leave the British Union.
Without Judeo-Christian values, we fall into scientific materialism, the belief that physical matter is the only reality, and therefore also fall into nihilism, the belief that life has no meaning, that we're merely stellar dust in a cold universe.
So, can I call that's an appeal to emotion? If I've ever seen one, that is very much an appeal to emotion. First of all, nihilism isn't an inherently bad thing. Nihilistic is more of a, you don't have any inherent purpose outside of what you give yourself. And scientific materialism, there's almost nothing wrong with that. So I'd like you to refute that in some way, but let's let him go.
Without Greek reason, we fall into fanaticism, the belief that fundamentalist adherence to unprovable principles represents the only path toward meaning.
And this is... fundamentalism is the most, from my perspective, in my opinion, I'm not going to make a truth claim because you can't when it comes to religion, and it would be seen as hypocritical. From my perspective, fundamentalism is the largest drain on Western civilization and is something we regularly face, where nihilism first isn't a problem, and B is a very rare occurrence in Western civilization.
The Soviet Union, Communist China, and other socialist tyrannies rejected faith and murdered 100 million people in the 20th century.
Well, not for, those people they murdered was for a grab of power and a control of power, not for a lack of a belief. Those actions aren't because they didn't have religion, it's because they were totalitarian, and that's how totalitarians do. Nazi Germany was a very religious place, but they murdered millions as well. And that's definitely not socialism. But let's let them go into the Muslim world next.
Much of the modern Muslim world has embraced faith, but rejected reason. It's noteworthy that when the Muslim world did embrace Greek reason from the 8th to the 14th centuries, it was a leading center for scientific advancement. So again, we need both Jerusalem and Athens, revelation and reason.
I would like to know Ben Shapiro's thoughts on my argument that I'm having here. I'm fitting this in here because I think this is the best place to put it. I agree with him that fanaticism, especially religious fanaticism, I don't know how to say the word very well, is inherently dangerous and damaging. But his argument that, socialism, which really isn't what the Soviet Union or Communist China or any of those are communist countries, which is a separate thing, and is a false dichotomy, I believe. They're separate, but are on the same political spectrum. But that's like saying Nazism and conservatism are the same thing, and everyone who has died to fascism really died to a form of conservatism, which is not how it worked, and that's no one should actively argue for that. So what I'm pointing out here, I guess, is this is a form of fear-mongering by PragerU and Ben Shapiro against Islam and socialism. But religious fanaticism is very common in the United States, all over the place, like with the NIFB, which I did a video on pretty recently. Go check it out. I'll definitely put that in the description. And those most people would consider to be part of the Western civilization that he's talking about. We're 23 minutes in, and there's a little bit left of his video, so I'm going to let him continue, and then I'll finish off my thoughts.
And yet many want to reject both. These people call themselves progressives.
Yay! Political charged attacks of a religious, not a religious group, a political group you disagree with by saying they're un-Western civilization, or un-American, I guess is what he's going for this. I'd like to see some evidence of that. So let's let him get into that with the last minute and a half of his video.
Ironically, they want to take us backwards to a time when man was governed neither by reason nor faith, but by feeling, and therefore back to a time of moral chaos and disorder, of feeling over fact.
That is a major straw man. I don't think I've seen a bigger straw man in a pretty long time. He's definitely playing to an audience, but I don't know if he tears down that statement, tears down that system, but I don't know of a single progressive that says we should run only on facts, only on feelings, and not on facts. What I think some progressives, and I don't know exactly how to qualify my position on the political spectrum. I'll probably do a video on that at some point, because this 2020 election I'm going to sink my teeth into, even though this will be a primary atheist channel. I don't know of a single progressive that argues that we should care only about people's feelings. What progressives do argue, Moorhand, is that we shouldn't base our actions should be primarily, at least government action should be there to help people, which I think at the very least is a very noble goal, and or at least at the very worst is a weird way of attempting to gain power, and at the very best is a strong effect of actually trying to change the country. Now, I don't know my exact positions. I don't know if I'd qualify myself as a progressive. I fall, like, when I took a political compass, I fall towards anarchist left, but I don't know. I feel like the government should have more power than that implies. But anyway, let's let him finish up his video.
It would be a fatal mistake to follow the progressives. Stick with Athens and Jerusalem. I'm Ben Shapiro, editor of the Daily Wire and author of The Right Side of History for Prager University. Thank you for watching this video. To help keep PragerU videos free, please consider making a tax-deductible donation.
Alright, so let's do a quick clarification of everything we've gone over. He states that Judeo-Christian values are important to Western civilization for some reason. He gives some examples but can't give evidence for why those examples are inherently given by Judeo-Christian values. That's the big thing, and he does that consistently throughout the video, and I hope I point that out well enough. He uses most of this video to set up a way of getting people to agree with him, and then with the last minute or so of the video, he strawmans a political group of people that he doesn't like, and says they say something that they don't necessarily say. Doesn't give any quotes that that's what they're doing, has no sources, and then asks for donations for Prager University to keep up all these lies, and they're tax deductible, which I think is a load of bullcrap. But anyway, it's going to be 29 minutes, so it'll be about the same length as the last video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Have a nice day. Roman Atheist, out.